Welcome, everyone, to a discussion of financial benefits for those who are experiencing financial hardship due to COVID-19 and the recent outbreak. I am thrilled today to have with me Bob Johnson, our corporate treasurer for National Storytelling Network. He has volunteered his time to help make a little bit more sense of what we're looking at here. So thank you so much, Bob, for joining us today. Thank you for all the time and effort that you have put into this. I know you have a treasure trove of information, so I will let you dive right into some of the questions that you've been getting regarding some of these federal benefits to gig workers.
Thank you, Erin. Why don't we start with some of the simple stuff, which you probably heard in the news, but returns, anything that was due April 15th is now due July 15th. That includes your estimated payments and your tax returns and your payments for your tax returns. So if you have a quarter two estimated payment, unfortunately that's still due June 15th. So your quarter two is going to be due before your June or before your quarter one. The IRS will probably extend that, but we haven't heard yet. You have to watch your state due dates though, because not all states have. Tennessee has done that, but every state has not. And I know some states have come up with dates in between there. So watch your own state so you get your tax return filed on time. There's also various enforcements deferred. If the IRS is after you for something, you need to check Google it, see what kind of changes there have been. They're not allowed to do certain things during this period. And also any tests, and I believe the coverage for COVID-19 treatment, even for high deductible health plans, is got to be covered without jeopardizing the plan. So you should be covered even if you've got a deductible. It should pay for it anyway. So much for that. Most of what we're going to talk about is applicable to gig workers too. So storytellers that are sole proprietors or single individuals. Most of this, if not all of it, is applicable to you also. So the first thing is the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act, I believe, FFCRA. It did two things. Basically, it gave sick leave to people, and the government's going to pay the employer for the sick leave. As a Schedule C person, you are a company. So if you get sick with it, I don't see any reason why you couldn't apply for the sick leave also. And there's several conditions, and some of it's at 2/3 pay and some of it's at full pay. And it covers things like I've got to stay home because my kid, we've got problems with my kid. The daycare is closed. The doctor said you should stay home either because you were exposed, you may have it, or you do have it, those kind of things. So again, in order to get the full details, Google that. There's tons of information on the internet. The other is the Family Medical Leave Act extension. Previously, that only applied to employers with 50 or more employees. Well, they've extended that down to 0. So anybody that is a company that has employees would, and I would presume that would also include you as a sole proprietor, must provide the family medical leave for their employees. And basically that one's for, my daycare closed, or my grandmother watches my kids and now she won't because she's afraid, or she's sick, or anything like that is now covered. And again, it's on the government's dime. And the way you get that money is you withhold it from your payroll tax deposit. If your payroll tax deposit, and if you're a sole practitioner or sole proprietor, that would be your quarterly estimated payments, is not adequate to cover that. There's a Form 7200 that they came out with where you can apply to the IRS for payment, and they claim that's pretty immediate. We'll see. So the next thing is the CARES Act. It's an acronym, but I'm sure you've heard plenty about it. The first thing people jump on is that you get $1,200 per adult and $500 per dependent child. There's a big issue now with college students that are still dependents on their parents' tax returns, but they really need the money. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Congress doesn't come up with something that extends that to, because it's now only 16 and under is only the ones that are going to get the $500. The parents get the $500 payment. So if you're a family of four, you get the $2,400 for mom and dad, and $500 each for each kid. And they claim that's going to go out shortly, but we'll see. They've got millions of them to distribute. If you have if you file your tax return and use a direct deposit or direct pay on your tax return, or if you're on Social Security or SSI or some other federal program like that, and they have your bank information, it'll be direct deposited into your bank fairly soon, we hope. If you are like my son-in-law, who doesn't like anybody to know his bank information, so they mail a check, apparently on the IRS website, there's a little app that you can log in and give them your bank information, so they'll direct deposit. If you expect to get a check, it's going to be months, so it'd be a good idea to if you have not already given them your bank information, to do that. Another change in it is that if you're my age or in the area where you have to take RMDs, required minimum distributions, those are suspended for this year. And one of the reasons for that is the stock market's taken quite a hit. So having to take money out while the stock market is in the dips is not a great idea. So if you can afford it, you can cut off your RMD for the year. It's only for the year, though. You have to take it next year. You can also take loans from a tax deferred account if you have a 401k or something like that, and you want to take a loan up to $100,000. You can take early distributions from deferred accounts. In the past, if you took money before you're 59 and a half out of your tax deferred, they charge you a 10% penalty plus the income tax. They're still going to charge you the income tax, but they're going to spread it over 2 years. So you pay half of it next year and half of it the following year. But they're not going to charge you the 10% penalty. So that's a good way to get money if you really get in dire straits. But remember, that's your retirement money. So if you want to be able to eat when you're retired, you may not want to do that. Employers can give employees up to $5,250 for paying student loans. And apparently it's not included in your income, and the employer gets to deduct it. Now, I would think, but I'm not positive, but I would think since you are your own company, you might be able to take advantage of that. That may be one you can't, though. I'm not totally sure about that. Student loan payments and interest on student loans is deferred until September 30th, so no interest is accruing after the effective date, which was probably April 1st, until September 30th. You won't have any student loan interest, and you don't have to pay on your student loans till then. Charitable contributions, this is a great one for people that are involved with organizations like NSN. When they changed the tax law in 2017, they made the standard deduction so big that most people can't itemize. So some people said, if I get a tax deduction for it, I'll donate, otherwise I'm not. Well, now they can give up to $300 to total charitable deduction or charitable contributions, and deduct that so-called above the line, so it's not dependent on being able to itemize. So that's a good thing to get out there to people that you might want to get to contribute to you. if uh, if it applies to you, the limits on contribution deductions have been increased. In the past, if you had, and I had one client that did that, they gave a lot of money away, but they didn't really have much income, so they limited the amount that you could deduct for charitable contributions, even though they're well into the itemized territory. So that's been increased. You got to be pretty generous to have that be an issue. And probably not useful to many people, but there was a flaw in the tax law of 2017 that didn't allow businesses that did improvements to deduct that stuff all at once. In the past, if you bought, or still now, if you buy equipment, instead of depreciating it over 7 years or 30 years or whatever, you could deduct it all in the first year all at once. They left out qualified improvement property, which is defined as things like leasehold improvements and so on that you might do. So if that applies to you, or of course it wouldn't matter on a nonprofit, it really wouldn't apply to a nonprofit since we don't pay taxes. So you can defer the employer share of payroll taxes. So again, as a sole proprietor, you're paying self-employment taxes twice. You're paying your own, and you're paying what would have been paid by your employer. So that part of it can be deferred half to next year and half to the following year. So you just don't deposit them, and you can defer them. If you had operating losses built up, the tax law in 2017 used to be able to carry, if you had a loss in a year, you could amend your previous year's tax return and get a refund back for it. The tax law of 2017 changed that. You could only carry them forward. Now, and I presume that's just for this year, you can take it back 5 years. So presumably you could change your last 5 years of tax returns and get refunds for it. There's in order to get people to keep their employees on, one of the, and only one of the provisions is that there's an employee retention credit. For your employees, if you have them, and I guess it would apply to singles too, the first $10,000, you can get $5,000 credit. So the most you can get for anybody is $5,000, but it is a credit. So that's money, not a deduction. And then the big thing that you've been seeing in the news, and started Friday supposedly, and I saw in the news where the Bank of America had tens of thousands of applications for this, is the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. And basically, and this is available to self-employed people. So this is certainly something you could use. And it's based on what you pay yourself, which is basically your net earnings from self-employment. What happens is that you compile the last 12 months of your payroll expenses, health insurance premiums, and retirement payments. You compile those numbers, you average it, and then you multiply the monthly average by 2.5. And then you can borrow that money from the federal government. They claim it's going to go pretty quick, so you need to jump on that if you're going to do it. But you borrow it from the federal government, and if you keep your employees on the payroll for the 2-month period after the loan payment to you, that's forgiven. So effectively, they're paying 2 months of your payroll and your health insurance and your any employer contribution to the to like a 401k, like a matching on 401k or something. The thing is fairly complicated. The banks aren't all set up to do it. I had one fellow just this afternoon. We're doing this on the Friday or on the Sunday after the Friday that thing took effect. So um, I had one person call me this afternoon, and the bank had called him. This is Sunday. Called him and wanted some information so he could submit the thing first thing in the morning. So this thing is hot, and they claim that some people have estimated this money is going to run out pretty quickly. But I've seen a lot of press that says that Congress is being pressured to act to put more money into this program, because it's not really very good if you have to get in there. It's like buying a ticket to a concert. The first half hour they sell out. Not do you much good. So stay tuned. This might come back and allow you to do it. In the meantime, you need to go to your bank, because this is all administered through the bank, not directly with the Small Business Administration. It is an SBA guaranteed loan, so the bank doesn't have anything at stake, but it's administered by the banks, and they're applying to the SBA to get it. Another SBA loan that you can get is a EIDL. It's Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. And this is not a new loan. This has been around for a long time, but they've made a lot of changes to it, so it makes it much more streamlined and much more usable. And you'll see people say you get the first $10,000 free, and that may be true. That you go onto the SBA website and you apply for this EIDL loan. There's a checkbox on there that says I want my $10,000, but it's up to $10,000. So we really don't know how much people are really going to get. And if you don't go ahead and apply for the whole loan, which requires a lot of paperwork and a lot of time and all that, you still get to keep $10,000 or whatever you get. So it's a good way for an immediate infusion of cash. They said that it's going to be distributed within 72 hours. So it's supposed to be immediate cash. But the bill gave the government agencies 15 days to implement the program. And the 15 days aren't even up yet. And this thing has been available since last Monday. You could make the application last Monday. So a whole bunch of people have already applied, but I don't think anybody's seen any money yet. So maybe sometime this coming week, you'll be able to see people actually getting the money. It's a good thing. It's an alternative to the PPP, but it sort of meshes with the PPP. You can do both, but if you get both, whatever you get from the EIDL loan is deducted, so to speak, from the PPP loan. In other words, you can't double dip on it. And nobody really seems to know the process that's going to work. So you may wind up having to pay your $10,000 or whatever back, but they've given you the money. So if you didn't spend it, presumably you'd have it to give them back. Let's see, the other big thing, which everybody will be able to apply for, is the unemployment enhancement. The unemployment offices are obviously bombarded. If you saw the unemployment numbers in the last 2 months, there's been 10 million people apply or out of work, unemployment applications. I can't imagine the unemployment offices and the stress they're under. But anyway, it gives anybody that's unemployed, including self-employed, which is new because you've never been able to get unemployment as a self-employed person, the state rate, whatever the state's going to give you, and Tennessee I think is either $250 or $275 plus $600 a week. So it could be that you get more money unemployed than you got working. That's a possibility. So, but obviously you've got to go through your unemployment office, and good luck on that. They also have encouraged the states, but didn't mandate it, to eliminate the week waiting period that many unemployment programs and states have. So presumably you could get it right away. I'm guessing you won't get it right away, but you may get it, back payments when you finally do get it, because the states just got this thrown at them, and they have to modify their systems because they're taking people that have never been eligible for unemployment before. I had one person call me and said they logged on. She's a hairdresser, called on to or logged on to register, came back with zero. and, and another fellow who's a self-employed person, but he has a mattress store. So he's self-employed. He's on a Schedule C, but he has employees. So he applied too, which is totally legitimate. He's self-employed, and it came back with zero. So you have to be patient with your unemployment offices. But you get this enhanced unemployment for 4 months. And they did extend the amount of time that you can collect unemployment. I believe it's 13 weeks longer than what would normally have been. So, I mean, that is a really valuable benefit to people that are find themselves unemployed for no reason other than this COVID virus. The Real ID program, we got ours, but I think a lot of people haven't yet. If you wanted to fly before, I think it was October 1st of this year, you had to have a Real ID or your passport. That has been deferred at least a year, which sort of implies they may defer it even farther. One interesting part of it, without sounding too political, is that the act prohibits federally elected officials from getting any funds from the $500 billion fund that's in this program to help companies out. So Donald Trump won't be able to get anything for it for his companies. No money in there for the border wall. There is $100 million in there for arts funding. There's $25 million for the JFK Center for Performing Arts, and there's $75 million for the National Endowment for the Arts. So that's something that the administration had been trying to cut out. So obviously the Democrats were able to get something back into it. You're also protected from foreclosure on your house. You can't make your mortgage payment for 60 days. But there's wording in there that says that can be extended for additional 30-day periods. So they don't want everybody to wind up on the street because they can't pay their mortgage because they don't have any income. And some of these benefits there's going to be some delay in getting them. So you may not be able to pay your mortgage this month because this stuff is available, but you really can't get it yet. There's also more funding for food assistance for food banks in Puerto Rico and other U.S. possessions. There's more money in there for the SNAP program, the food stamps, but and the child nutrition program. But apparently they did not extend any eligibility. It's still the same eligibility, just more money to fund the thing. And the one thing about this that we need to be aware of is that, I'm giving you this information at a high level, but remember that this is all new. There's a lot of confusion about various parts of it. And I'm certainly no expert on it. I don't think anybody is. I don't think anybody's figured it all out yet. So you need to, if you're going to act on any of this stuff, you need to do some research and to talk to your own tax preparer if you have one, or if you do your own, make sure you do good research. There are plenty of ways to get information. The internet is just full of articles. Some of them are not quite accurate, so you want to unless you see one from a really reputable source, get 2 or 3 opinions before you act on something. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, Erin. I don't know what else. You might have some questions.
Thank you so much. I mean, I had questions along the way, and in all reality, you answered all of them. So that was very comprehensive, very concise, and well put. I guess, my primary questions are, what are the three things that and we'll specify storytellers who are gig workers, what are the three things that they should really focus on or prioritize? It's sounding like PPP might be one of them. What are the other recommendations that you might have for specifically gig workers who are storytellers?
Okay, well, PPP, if you actually make money, would be something worth pursuing. If you don't make money or if you lose money, because it's based on your net income from self-employment. So if you are making money, this will allow you to protect some of your income. So that one would be worth pursuing. And unemployment definitely would you'd be able to get that. The EIDL loans, maybe. I mean, that might be worth pursuing. One webinar that I was on was talking about the amount that people are going to get. And if you read the law, it says up to $10,000. But everybody keeps talking about the $10,000 free money. They haven't announced who's going to get how much yet. But somebody speculated, and this supposedly they had some kind of information that employers with 10 or more employees would get the 10,000. Anybody else would get less. And by the way, the PPP thing does carry interest. It's 1%, so it's no big deal. And you do have time after the period that the 2-month period. You do have time to pay that. I believe it's 2 years to pay that interest, but it shouldn't be too much. It was 0.5%, and somebody this literally just changed at midnight a couple of days ago. It went to 1%. So I mean, you really have to kind of stay tuned. And if you're doing PPP, definitely talk to your bank, because and I want to apply for one of those with NSN, but we don't really have a relationship with our bank in Kansas City. So I'm trying to attack some of our local banks and see if I can't get them to do the thing. And some of these things can be combined too. Like I'm kind of wondering if the PPP doesn't work out for NSN, that maybe we could do the so-called $10,000. We don't have 10 employees, but we get something plus the credit for the retention credit. So I mean, there's so many alternatives in here that you really kind of need to think it through, and how am I going to get the most money? But to answer your question, I think probably unemployment and PPP would be probably the top two, and the EIDL would be the next possible one. And that if you're really having cash problems, you can defer your payroll tax deposits. That would be another one.
And would you say that the same recommendations apply for nonprofits, or are there additional beyond that, specifically for nonprofits?
No, nonprofits are in it just like anybody else is. Now, apparently religious organizations are too, even though the SBA in the past has had some restrictions on religious organizations. So if your church needs to apply for this, for either the 10,000 or the full EIDL loan, you can get up to, I think it's $10 million through the EIDL thing, if you can justify it. We closed our church, and we've had an electronic giving program set up for a long time, and we've encouraged people to do that. But if you can't pass the collection plate on Sunday morning, obviously your revenue is going to take a hit. So if you can get people to do it electronically, fine, but not everybody will. So I haven't looked to see how bad it is, but I'm sure we've taken a hit. But you can apply for the payroll thing or the 10,000. And if you actually lay your people off, our staff are still working, but they got the church locked, and you have to have an appointment to see anybody. So, but nonprofits or any of these. So if you're involved in a nonprofit, you can talk to your nonprofit. I mean, I know there's a lot of nonprofit storytelling organizations around the country. Any of this would apply to them too. It applies basically to everybody. The intention was that the virus was not going to take people's paychecks away from them, that people could still manage to eat and pay their mortgage and so on.
And I guess, like I said, this has been very in-depth and very concise. And as you've said, this is a continually developing situation. So what we have now is the information that we're presenting, but it might change tomorrow. So certainly do keep tuning back in for more information. Bob, what's one thing that you would tell people just on an emotional level? What would you say to people who are really stressed and anxious about finances right now? Is there any calming peace of mind that you might be able to provide for them?
Well, I believe that you probably shouldn't stress too much, because no lender and the government is not going to let you starve to death, and they're not going to put you under the underpass, living under the underpass. So if you have a mortgage that you can't pay, call your bank. I'm sure they'll give you a few months of forbearance on it. You'll apply for at least unemployment. I mean, if you don't do anything else, at least apply for unemployment, because you'll at least get 4 months of the same thing you would have gotten if you were actually able to work. And I think the government, as soon as this bill was signed, the Congress people are already talking about the next one. What's the next bill? What's the extension of this CARES Act? So I suspect that they will take care of us pretty much, and that things will work out. It's going to get stressful. I mean, in more ways than one. I mean, we're hunkered down. We're not going out. Go to the grocery store, but some local grocery stores will let you in at like 7 in the morning till 9, only if you're over 60. So we're doing that. And the beauty of that is they just stock the shelves overnight. So I can actually find toilet paper if I need it, or paper towels, because we have 29 cats, and we use a lot of paper towels. So we actually have been able to find them by just shopping around and taking advantage of that. But I wouldn't stress. I mean, I know that's hard to it's easy to say and hard to do, but I think you'll find that people that expect you to pay them will be forgiving. Everybody's under the same thing. I just saw an article today about some landlord in Brooklyn, I think, had forgiven, or I think he forgave the rent for some number of months for a couple of hundred of his tenants. So, you may find, if you're renting, you may find that sort of thing, or maybe they just say, well, you can pay me when you can, whatever. So I just don't think it's worth getting too upset about, and stay put. Stay out of don't be one of these running around a Walmart with your family, and because unfortunately you're contagious before you even know you got a problem. So it's not a good idea to be out running around.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, for your time and the energy that you've put into this research. We really do appreciate it. If there are any other major updates, I'm sure we will appear again on the National Storytelling Network's Facebook page. So please be sure to follow, like, subscribe, whatever you can, so that we can make sure that we get you the most timely updates that we possibly can, given the amount of information that is coming at us so quickly. So thank you again, Bob, so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I hope we will continue to stay in touch and update as we can.
Okay. Thank you, Erin.